Hey everybody, it's Dover time. We are back for week 2 of our Dev Journal recap for Total Extreme Wrestling 9. This week continues the pace with some huge news for brand new gameplay features, as well as some really nice quality of life improvements, including one I personally think will spur on sort of a new renaissance for creation of new databases and especially real world mods, unlike anything we've ever seen before. If you guys are liking these types of breakdowns, feel free to like the video. If you haven't already yet, think about subscribing. We have some big plans here for TEW IX, and I would love you guys to all be on the ground floor. With that said, let's get into it. Day 6 starts us off in a huge way with the announcement of an angle overhaul. Let's get into what they're doing to the angle system, because the angle system has always been a little finicky and kind of a slog to work through, and this is a huge change to the way all the past games have run. This is a big change. So let's see what they're doing. The old angle system was fine, but was really starting to show its age, and so the entire angle system has been overhauled for the new game. First of all, pre-written angles have been removed entirely as they were too fiddly, unintuitive, and limiting. In their place, each angle is created at the time of booking, with the process being streamlined to be as user-friendly as possible. One of the first big changes here, as he highlights, is that each angle can now consist of not just a single part, but up to 1 through 5 parts. So you can now have multiple parts within a single angle. That's huge. Each part has the following settings: a name, a length, a location, a type, so for example an angle, an interview, or a video, a status, so either live or pre-taped, and a content type. The content types here range from things like hype, serious, comedy, storyline, development, and surprise. Within each part, you can assign workers and give them specific roles. Some of the examples here are cutting a promo, fighting, attacking, victim, segment, host, and selling injury. The role you assign them allows the game to understand what they're meant to be doing and how they should be rated within the game. Unlike the old system where you can only use a small number of workers, there's now no limit at all on how many workers can be assigned to each part, and you could have people appear, disappear, change roles, all between various parts. So you have a lot of options here. It's important to note also with this whole process of sort of choosing what they're doing, but it seems like they're getting rid of the sort of drop downs where you choose how a person's rated on. There's also another small feature in here that is singing right to my heart, which is you also have the option whether to let the game create output text based on what is being booked or write your own, with the latter being useful for immersion purposes for those who make diaries and YouTube videos or who want custom text. So that's me. I make YouTube videos and I have to go through a ton of hoops to get custom text. It makes booking 10 times longer. This seems like it's super easy, intuitive to input it. Should make booking, especially if you like to sort of make like fantasy journals and have that custom text to really describe what's going on. You're going to have that ability at your fingertips a lot easier than sort of the older system where you had to jump through all those hoops. Adam concludes with this segment saying that with the new system in place, it gives a user a ton of flexibility and scope for being creative and avoids the rigidity of the old system. By separating them out into parts, it also means that you can flow angles much better and you don't need to resort to booking multiple different segments to achieve real-world effects. So the example that he gives here, you could have an angle start with one wrestler cutting a promo in part 1, and then him becoming a victim of attack by a rival in part 2, then have a respective partner hit the ring and kick off a brawl for part 3, and then have an authority figure appear on the big screen and make an impromptu tag match in part 4, which all of that can be done very quickly and all really counts as one angle. So the game understands what you're trying to achieve from the parts details and the roles you assign, and then it scores them appropriately. It's a very intuitive system which can simulate just about anything you think of, and this allows bigger, more complicated angles that are more realistic and less rigid. This is a huge game changer for anybody that's really into custom storytelling within this game. This next one is another huge game changer, and this is the one I was alluding to early in the open that I think is going to spur on more databases than we possibly ever had before. The dirty secret that's not often talked about TEW 2020 is that it was hard to make databases for. To combat that, we kind of pulled off the training wheels and all the restrictions in the editing of databases, and we see that here with the new option to externally edit databases. Now, this had abilities to be worked around, and some people were doing it. It required a lot of extra steps and custom tools. Now, all of that's gone. A new external editing system has been introduced for almost all the sections of the editor. The way this works is that it takes your current data and creates a database file which isn't password protected, where all the various columns have easily identifiable names. So you're going to be able to export a raw database file. Think like an Excel template with columns and rows, with all the possible changes and additions you can have in the editor. There's no codes being used. There's no secret numbers that you have to cross-reference. Everything's done in plain English and is easily accessible. You can then take that database and do editing in whatever your preferred software. So for example, these databases are using a specific code that you can easily put them into something like Microsoft Access and very quickly mass edit or create your own database just in that external file. Once you've made the changes that you want, you can then import data back into the game. TEW will automatically run all the necessary error checks, make sure you're not introducing any problems with incorrect settings, flagging them, and then giving you an option to fix them within the database. Adam says all of this means that you can make use of the tools that external software provides, such as being able to edit multiple records at once, sort columns of data into specific order, or make comparisons. It also makes group projects a lot easier. To think of all of those sort of failed to launch massive database projects that people wanted to talk about, and they never really had a good way of doing it. You can now divide the work up. So you could hand one person relationships, hand one person events, and because they're working with names rather than ID numbers, you won't run into trouble with having to keep track of what state the database currently is in, or who's, if someone's overwriting their work. So you can kind of have teams now through these external tools really making hyper detail-oriented databases. This is great. It makes the database teams larger, makes it easier for them to handle. It allows more collaboration, and most importantly, the fact that you can edit quickly outside of the game means that you could see new databases and updates databases made much quicker and much more accurately with all that tedium removed. Of course, you could still go in and edit the old-fashioned way, and they did make some improvements to the editing system, one of which was highlighted today, which is that they enhanced the mass editing feature, try to beef it up and allow a lot more options. In the old system, you can, and they tried to make it easier, but with all the new features, there's a lot of data that needs to be added, and this is going to allow just a huge renaissance, in my opinion, of database making. I might even dip my toes into database making. Day 7 kicks us off with some more interesting features and additions to the game, expanding the eras function from TEW 2020. We have enhanced them now. According to Adam, the eras featured has been beefed up to offer a much finer degree of control over a lot of the figures that are used in the behind-the-scenes game engine. The categories this new update covers are wage demands, sponsorships, attendance, TV viewership, pay-per-view viewership, TV revenue, pay-per-view revenue, merchandise income, marketing expenses, admin expenses, miscellaneous expenses, show costs, venue hires. The list is large. So with this, you can now set anywhere from 1 to 500, with 100% being the default level. You can change anything really that would be a metric to kind of define an era and really hone in what those eras look like. This is going to be huge for historic saves. So if you want to make an era where it's much more realistic to 1970s, 1960s, 1980s, right? Or even just the sort of recent changes from 2016 to now, you're going to be able to kind of tweak those features and add a lot more options to it. In addition, one of the interesting sort of updates with that is era-specific contracts. In addition to what was discussed, obviously, with the enhanced eras, you can now also set whether written contracts are enabled or disabled. So if it's disabled during an era, you cannot offer written contracts at all. So if you wanted to set like a historical context, like a territory days, you could set it up that like the option to have exclusive written contracts is off the table and just completely disabled. That's super cool. And it's going to be able to kind of make some of those more historical saves a little more realistic. Another nice update that they provided in this day's journal was the new Battle Royals. It's just a small tweak, but I love it because it seems silly that we weren't able to do it before. You can now set a new Battle Royal configuration from anywhere between 10 to 60 members being booked. Day 8's not as big as the last one, but it still has some nice quality of life features that I wanted to call out. The first makes it a little bit easier to play a child company. When playing as the booker of a child company, the player can now choose to contact the parent company, whether the parent's controlled by a player or an AI, and request that they consider calling up a worker. This is something that's been requested for quite a while, and it adds some extra realism and also allows you play with an eye for producing talent with a little more control. This is a nice feature. I would also like to hear if we have the option as a child company to request like a stay, so that like, I don't think they're ready, I need a little more time with them. In general, the playing of a child company felt a little half-baked and undercooked in TEW 2020, and anything that would allow you to have a little more freedom while playing it and make that dynamic more interesting between the child company and the parent company is a welcome addition. I think this is good. I don't think it's enough, but there could be other changes that are in the wings that could really make playing a child company very interesting. Another welcome addition is a litany of diversity-related settings to be added to each worker. In order to simulate the real world better, we have a host of new options, including gender ID, pronouns and sexualities, all of which have been expanded to add just more options to better recreate sort of the real world scenario. So this primarily being used for relationship calculating purposes, but some products may also use this data. So for example, there might be products that are in the product fields that are LGBTQ plus friendly, and they may explicitly be looking for people to hire. So that's super cool, and again, really reflective of the real world. Day 9 is a gift for historical save players, because it adds a host of really nice features that it's not really requested, but is going to really be a big game changer if you are a long-term player and you don't just quit a save after a year. The first is more realistic avatars. What do we say by realistic? Well, you have sort of a gamey system already where you kind of select, user talents and then the Iron Fist Velvet Rope system. That's been replaced entirely. According to Adam, in their place, the game instead just uses the avatar's personalities, skills, attributes for evaluating how they interact with people. Additionally, it keeps track of their decisions and actions in order to figure out how they'd be viewed by other people and what their reputation would be. The end result is that you got a more realistic system where it should feel like you are the avatar. And as it's all handled by the game without the user needing to do anything, it's a smoother process that requires less work from the user. This is great. Basically, what I've been asking for a while is I said, make TEW more like Crusader Kings. Make it a personality-driven game. Now you are also a character in the game. Your attributes will interact with the game. So if you play a character with a temper, you know, they're going to be worse at interacting with people. All the little attributes, all the skills, all the personality traits, all are going to work cohesively to try to even make you a character in the game. With that, you also are no longer immortal. In previous games, user avatars have always been immortal, so this has now been changed, and avatars will eventually pass away. They do get special protection, so they're not eligible for random deaths, and they can't die before the age of 66 under any circumstance. You no longer can play an immortal Danny DeVito. You will get old, you will die, and you will be able to still play after that. And that's with the next update, which is changing avatars. There's now an option to change avatars. This is available on the options screen and can be used whenever you want, so you don't have to wait for your character to get old in order to use it. Available anytime, even if you just want to change things up. It gives you the following choices. You can play a brand new avatar. Select either a selection or regeneration. If you choose selection, you are choosing an existing character as a new avatar, exactly as you would as you started a new game to choose a new player. Or you can choose regeneration, and your new avatar is created by applying a normal regeneration process on your old avatar. You get to pick the name, the picture, the bio, and to select whether it's a legacy character or not. So if you do play as a legacy character, you'll be able to start with a relationship with the old character. So if you wanted to, you could sort of have a child and bring them in to the game, and you can do that by a regeneration. Once you pick your new avatar, you also could pick the career option. You can either do a choose or replace option. If you select choose, you can either select a company to work for, or you can choose to be unemployed, exactly as you would start a new game by adding a new player. If you choose replace, then your new avatar simply replaces the old avatar in the job they had. Any existing storylines, bookings are all retained. There's a direct continuation. So again, if you're playing a historical save and daddy dies, you know, ripe old age is 77 or something, he can pass on the company to his son, and from there you can play as that son, regenerate that character, and go right where you started. Or you could make a brand new character and kind of play in that world still in a sort of a new way. If you wanted to do this before a character died, of course you have the option. For the old avatar, you can either retire, normalize, or normalize and release. So choosing retire means that the old character leaves the business immediately. Normalize means that the old avatar just becomes a normal AI-controlled character and keeps whatever their current status is, including remaining on the roster of the company they were booking. Choosing normalize and release is the same as normalize, except the old avatar is released from whatever company they were a head booker of. So you got a lot of different options. If you want to just change it up, but you don't want to send a company in turmoil, you can just go ahead and normalize it. They just turn into an AI. It's another new feature related to avatars that's really nice. Is avatar wealth. If the user's avatar has a wealth rating of rich or greater, they will automatically be able to donate some of those personal funds when founding a new company. So, if you're playing Tony Khan and you want to start a brand new company, you can go ahead and do that, and you're going to be able to pull some of that millionaire magic into the game. So you're going to have more money at the level that you build than you would normally if you were dirt poor. We'll end this day's journal with a bunch of nice quality of life features. They're not groundbreaking, but they're nice to have. The first is gimmick memory. When a worker leaves the company, the fans will remember their gimmick for 3 months. So that means if they return within that time period, everything resumes. So if you had some one-offs, some paper appearance deals, or some one-night contracts, and they got good gimmicks and you like the person, they will stay with them up to 3 months, and if they come back. Just a nice little quality of life feature so that you can, bring someone back into the fold and not have to start them at ground zero again. An additional nice little quality of life update, crowd heat's now displayed. So there's always a feature, but it was sort of obscured. The crowd's heat level is now shown on screen while displaying a show segment to the user. This makes it easier to follow along with how it's altering over time and makes crowd management a little easier. So if you're a person that likes to back out and edit a show on the fly, you're going to be able to do that a lot easier because you'll be able to visually see the crowd management as a concrete number or maybe even a bar. I don't know how it's displayed. And you'll be able to manage it on the fly. If you see that your crowd's petering out, maybe make a judgment call, back out to the editing screen and throw another match in there to lift the crowd, or change up the card on the fly. After all, you're the booker, you can do whatever you want. In addition, you'll also be able to see that crowd rating separate from the entire match output screen. So you can see the individual wrestling and the crowd rating for the bout, as well as the overall rating total. So you basically can see, here's the wrestler's rating, here's the crowd rating, here's the combined rating that ends up being the ultimate score. Just allows you to understand the formula going on a little bit easier. In addition, as a nice quality of life feature, you'll also be able to edit the game editor now during the evening phase of the game. So before, that was all locked away. Now you have the ability to go in and edit it. So if you're a little edit gremlin like I am, and you like to tweak the editor a little bit to suit your needs, you can go in there. You're not locked out. It's very nice. Day 10, our final day for week 2 of our dev journals, has a really interesting addition that it's going to be interesting if you play a larger company. We added media scrums. That's right. You can now experience the thrills and horrors of getting in front of the press and talking about your company as vaguely as you possibly can. It's a brand new feature to the game in which the user, in their capacity as head booker, sits down and fields questions from the wrestling media. These are only available to companies that are medium-sized or larger, and only after normal intent events. So little house shows or TV shows aren't available. There's no penalty for skipping these. It's entirely optional, but once you choose to start a scrum, you must stay until you answered all the questions in order to stop you from being able to easily avoid tough questions. Each question has 3 different flavors and text versions to add variety, and can have between 2 and 5 pre-written answers to choose from. These media scrums give you the opportunity to boost the morale of the locker room and an individual worker based upon your replies, as well as building relationships with your roster and improving your own reputation. In fact, media scrums are one of the only ways you can build your reputation as a booker without needing to book great shows. So you could book crap, but talk good, and it might still boost you up. The downside is that you may be asked tricky questions and have answer bad answers, and lead to morale issues, complaints, or even ruin your relationship with people if you throw them under the bus. The questions asked and the list of potential answers are all contextual and can be based on the event you just ran, recent important happenings in the game world, upcoming events that your rival's doing. Some answers are explicitly positive, neutral, or negative, regardless of the context, but many can have different impacts depending on the situation and the people in question. The members of the media will remember previous answers and can react negatively to inconsistencies or outright lies, and can also follow up on previous answers even in the same media scrum or a later one. If they sense a juicy story, they can kind of latch on that. In some cases, especially if the user is clearly lying, this can lead to a very difficult follow-up question where it may not be possible to avoid negative effects. In order to avoid the trap of repetition, there are currently over 270 possible questions in the game before release day, and it's been set up so it's very easy to patch in additional post-launch questions. So it's just a fun feature. Reading between the lines, it's a little bit of a shame that it seems that the questions are probably locked away. As a mod maker, as a database maker, you're probably not going to be able to add your own. That might just be due to complexity of how sort of the system is fielding them. But it sounds like it's going to be something that's very easy to add, and I would expect every patch to add more questions. So finally, if you wanted to sit down in the scrum and have the entire goodwill of your pay-per-view overturned due to some catastrophe post-show, you now have the ability to do it. Another nice quality of life feature they added was sort of an adjustment to the attendance levels. So now higher levels have been slashed across the board, particularly for events, with the importance of the event being now far more important to the calculation rather than in the past. Truly massive record-breaking attendance levels are now locked to only the most prestigious events. This means you're going to have to really work to get butts in the seat, which is great because really the attendance levels felt relatively unrealistic, and it means that you need to really build up the legacy of an event and allow it to become historic or legendary to really become key. You know, you're not going to get those 80,000 plus seats attendance records anymore unless your event is like considered the gold standard. You're also now going to have the option to make company headquarters. So you can build a physical headquarter via an investment screen. A company with an HQ gets some minor benefits to their prestige and influence, and then it can also be preset to have headquarters via the editor. Many brand new attributes for workers have been requested over the past 4 years and have now been added. So if you were on their forums, asked for a specific attribute to add to the personality matrix of the game, chances are it's probably in the game now. That's super great. I think personally, and I said it back in TEW 2020, the attribute system was a game changer. The game should be all about personality-driven conflict. We never really got there. I felt like very often, especially in real-world mods, it was very hard to have a bad locker room, and I'm hoping that the bad locker room is the default, and you have to work now to really get it to function at a high level. So besides some small quality of life stuff, which you could read for yourself in the journal entries, I left the link in the description. That is it for week 2. Not as game-changing and groundbreaking as week 1, but there's some really, really nice updates in this save. From quality of life ones to a few things that I think are really groundbreaking, like the angle overhaul. I'm super excited about it. Are you guys super excited about it? Is there anything in this week's recap for the journal entries that you're super excited about, or you actually don't like and you think it's a regression from the previous edition? Let me know. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. But that is it for me for this week. Come on back next time for week 3, and the game will be right around the corner by then, so might have our hands on the game itself very shortly after. But we're going to keep on covering this. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.